Final checks. Lance Corporal David Riggs stood up and began checking the armor of the person in front of him. He verified the helmet was sealed and the camera was recording as indicated by the tiny red light. Moving down, he saw no missing back armor plates, and the backpack showed a full charge of air and power. The medkit below the backpack still had its tamper seal from when they had geared up. On their right thigh, he located the shot shell pouch, still loaded. Then on the left, a small backup air canister and suit repair kit, again all armor panels in place. As he looked over the boots, he saw they were sealed and magnetized. He tapped their left shoulder twice with his fist, just as he felt the same on his. It was a simple ritual, repeated countless times, right before deploying, whether for training or combat. He looked down quickly, counting his rifle magazines. All 10 were in place. Today was not an exercise, though. A shuttle full of children had been kidnapped and held for ransom. He saw the news broadcast as they executed the teacher live. The Terran Republic's response was swift. His entire company had been mobilized aboard their ship, the TRW Chesty Puller. His platoon was aboard a boarding shuttle, rapidly closing in on the pirate vessel. They had managed a successful approach by stealth. Soon they would be aboard and ready to teach anyone who wished to learn about the culture of Terran Marines. 2 minutes. First priority is the children. Crew expendable. The ghosts of New Roanoke are watching. Make them proud. Announced Gunnery, Sergeant Hannah Satsuma. The red lights began to flash yellow. 30-second warning. Gunny Satsuma switched to the platoon's private circuit. Brace. She quietly ordered. Every one of them extended their right foot slightly forward and grabbed the rail next to them. Their shuttle slammed into the enemy airlock, forcing it to connect. Safety's off. Was ordered, and the shuttle doors opened. A few sparks were still shooting from the airlock where its controls were overridden as the first Marines entered. Quickly, 2 were pointing their rifles at the left and right flanks as the rest filled in the corridor. Without needing orders, the first team, on the left side, began to move left while the rest took the right. David was on the right side next to his squad leader. Based off scans and available schematics of this vessel, they were heading to the engine room. If they couldn't immediately find the children, they were to disable propulsion so more Marines could board. Luckily, it didn't matter if they were taking up the only airlock. Terran boarding shuttles were designed so another could dock with the forward or aft end of each other. Protocol was the first 2 in the launch tube were the interceptors with faster engines. Once the engines were knocked out, more would be on their way. David turned a corner and saw someone run by. Stop now, he ordered, shining his weapon light on them. His helmet translated it into 2 common galactic languages, but they had managed to run by another corner. Resisting the urge to give chase, his team simply continued their assault. When they came to the same corner, David pulled a small cable from his right arm. The camera feed instantly transferred to his helmet and his squad leaders as well. He bent it around the corner and was greeted by gunfire. His quickly pulled back. 2 on the left, 1 in the center, 3 on the right. Small arms, he announced to everyone. Per tactical doctrine, David and 2 others each pulled out a stun grenade and set them to detonate a half-second after each other. David threw his first, then the other 2. Their armor dampened almost all of the explosion and light. Before the pirates could recover, they rounded the corner and opened fire while advancing. As they approached the pirate barricade of supply crates, one of them, still alive, reached for a pistol. They were met with bayonets through their body. The body could be vaguely recognized as Necton. David looked down to let his sensors scan the body for signs of life. Quickly, they showed a flat line. The team moved on with their visors displaying the direction and distance to the engine room. They neared another corner, the design being common among Sarian ship designs, meant to confuse any non-crew members. David's camera confirmed a barricade, but no one present. Hiding in a crate was a lone crewman. His instructions were clear. Keep the humans out of the cargo bay, or his captain would kill him. He barely saw them quickly come around the corner and was rendered deaf and blind by the sound of explosions around him. Panicking, he opened fire. 2 rounds seemed to connect, and suddenly his world faded to black. David was caught surprised when a crate seemed to open fire. He felt himself go cold as a projectile landed between armor plates, then shooting pain as another hit him a little lower. Both hits were to his abdomen. His teammates opened fire, and he was barely aware of the sounds of impacts against flesh. He fell backward and landed with his back to the bulkhead. Hospital man Roger Smith was instantly at David's side. David's armor was already dispensing clotting foam to seal the wound. Corpseman Smith was getting ready to pull David back to the shuttle when an explosion went off behind him. Several pirates using their crewmen in the crate as bait had emerged to ambush the Marines. Several well-placed armor-piercing shots followed by a grenade had taken out most of the team, including their corpsmen. The rest lay dying. Inside, David felt fire within himself. He felt an ember that quickly grew into an inferno. He watched his team die at the hands of scum. He swore to himself that today the universe would learn to never mess with the children of Terra nor their protectors. He keyed a series of commands into his suit's computer. He felt his pain going away, replaced by the energy of rage. He took to his feet, using his rifle to prop himself up. He felt his strength returning and even growing until he screamed, causing the pirates to stop in their tracks. David, like all other Marines, had been trained in the final stand protocol of their combat suits. They even did training with toned-down versions of the drugs, but it barely compared to what he felt now. His suit had injected him with a lethal dose of painkillers, adrenaline, nitrous oxide, and stimulants. His entire skin itched, his wounds felt normal, and he lusted for the blood of his enemies. Aiming his rifle, he opened fire as he charged, killing several of them. Another fell to their knees trying to surrender. They were met with a crowbar emerging from his wrist. He slashed from their throat halfway down their chest. After they fell to the floor dying, he stomped their head with his boot. He could barely feel the crunch of bone. Another pirate charged him, and David fired a shot shell from his rifle, the steel pellets tearing through the unarmored alien. David racked the pump, ejecting the spent shell and loading a new one. He saw 3 more pirates running and gave chase. Their short legs were no match for his training and rage. The first had a look of terror on their face when a bayonet suddenly emerged from their chest. The one in front had no time to react as the rifle discharged another shot shell. Blue blood splattered throughout the corridor. David withdrew his rifle and fired a spray of bullets into the third. David dropped the bullet magazine and loaded a fresh one. David heard a scream. A terrified, high-pitched scream programmed by millions of years of evolution to alert parents and trigger an adrenaline response from behind a door to his right. His visor told him the energy readings from the reactor were farther away, but he knew that scream too well. He forced the door open. Control room secured, shutting down propulsion. When over the comm within the cargo bay, several pirates had made their last stand. They quickly opened fire, but David's instincts were faster, supplemented by the drugs in his system and his rage. He rolled toward them. Coming out of his roll, he went into a firing position and took out 2. He ducked and rolled again, still getting closer. The screams were louder, but not in the room. For more rounds, took out 2 pirates. The lone pirate threw his weapon down and adopted what was becoming the universal symbol of surrender. They raised all 4 of their arms up and away from their body. David heard more crying, and then the sound of a child being hit. The crying got quieter but didn't stop. David quickly closed the distance and held his bayonet to the pirate's throat. "Where?" he growled. The alien simply pointed at an access hatch in the bulkhead. Taking no chances, David fired a shot shell. The area and David himself were splattered with blood. He loaded the last shot shell from his magazine tube. David ripped off the access cover and saw Nsarian staring at him in amazement, then terror. David reached in and ripped him out of his fortification. For a split second, he saw several children in there. While still holding the pirate, David managed to throw them across the room. "Stay in there, kids," he yelled. David was on the Nsarian before they could recover. "Is that all of them?" he demanded, pointing toward the hole in the wall. "Yes, all. Just business." The Nsarian replied in broken English. "So is this," David responded as he again brought his boot up, then swiftly down on the Nsarian's head. He repeated this where his hearts were located. "Medics to my location, children rescued," he announced on the all-hands circuit of the comm. Suddenly feeling very tired, he looked around and surveyed the room. Briefly, he weighed what was worse, exposing the children to the bloodshed or keeping them in there. He reasoned he needed to see any wounds. He walked over to them. "Are any of you hurt?" he asked. "That man hit Billy." A little girl cried. "I'm okay," he heard a boy reply, sniffling back tears. "That man will never harm you again, Billy. Take my hand." He reached in and barely felt the tiny hands in his gloves. It took him a couple minutes to pull them all out. Each child was roughly the same size, yet they felt as though they were getting exponentially heavier. When the last one was free, he sat down leaning against the bulkhead. "Who are you?" "A child," a girl asked. "Lance Corporal David Riggs, Terran Marines. Here to rescue you," he answered, getting harder to speak. He heard footsteps. He grabbed his rifle and aimed. David felt joy in seeing Gunny Satsuma. He dropped his weapon as she lowered hers and recognized two corpsmen entering behind her. "Check the kids first. I'll be all right," he announced over the air. "Just need a nap." Ignoring him, a corpsman rushed over to him. "Bullshoot, Dave," he stated over comms. "I gotta get you out of here now," he stated. "Is there even a point?" David asked, again over comms. "Check the kids first. Get them to safety. I'm not going anywhere." David had always wondered how he would meet destiny. His dad, a retired sergeant major, told him fear was natural and healthy. David had known fear, but now it was a stranger to him. He just felt at peace and tired. A nap sounded so good right now. David reflected on what had brought him to this point. His earliest memory of begging his dad not to leave. He was going to a place called Trell. He knew it was important, but nothing was more important than spending time with his dad. Of course he left, and then later returned. Then he remembered 6th grade. He and Jenny Robinson were protesting his school's new policy. They had handcuffed themselves to lockers and each other, blocking the entrance to the principal's office. They failed, horribly, and both were suspended. What he remembers the most was when she was uncuffed. He was still handcuffed and she pinned him and kissed him. It was his first kiss. David was older now. He and Jenny had just left their senior prom. Jenny's parents were out of town. They went back to her place. Her parents came home early the next morning. Her dad chased him out while Jenny raged. David had arrived at Paris Island, a hot, humid, and miserable place. Every time he turned around, someone screamed at him. Yet he knew he would rather be nowhere else. The more they screamed, the more determined he became to prove them wrong. Now David was entering a drop pod. He was on a training ship, and his pod was being fired into the middle of the Australian outback. He could still remember the fear and the heat of re-entry, the sudden force of his pod landing on Terran soil. Later yet, he was with his dad. A party had ended, and they were sitting by the fire pit drinking. They were both horribly drunk. His dad told him he was, and always had been, proud of him. Everything had led him to this moment. He honestly had no regrets. "Guess that answers if I'm re-upping," he thought aloud. For extraordinary heroism and conspicuous gallantry in action against pirate forces, above and beyond the call of duty, while serving with the 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines, 2nd Marine Division in the Raxus system. The enemy had taken innocent children for ransom. LCPL David Riggs, as a team member of an elite boarding party, engaged the enemy in close-quarters combat. During the fight, he was mortally wounded, and then his teammates killed by cowardly attacks. Activating his suit's final stand protocol, he personally resumed the battle, killing many pirates and saving over 12 innocent children. Even while dying, he refused treatment so that the children could be attended to first. His heroic personal valor, honor, and savagery toward the enemy were keeping with the highest traditions of the Terran Marine Corps and worthy of the highest honor of the Terran Republic. Richard Aten, Prime Minister of the Terran Republic, Medal of Honor citation for Sergeant David Riggs, awarded posthumously.